to be on a video recording, please log off now and then it will be available for you at a later time. We will get that out to everybody, most likely next week at some point, if you'd like to also rewatch today. So again, thank you everybody for being here today. We appreciate you taking the time out to sit in today and learn about what STOP teams need to know about language access services. Today we will have 3 presenters. First, we will be starting off with Kofi Kangbo. He is the Language Access Coordinator for PCAR. After Kofi presents, we will welcome Natalia Petrova, who is the Interpreter Program Administrator at AOPC. And lastly today, Jamie Peasy is also joining us. She is the STOP Grant Program Consultant, also at AOPC. So I will pass it over here now to Kofi to begin.
Thank you, Desiree. Hi, everybody. Just 1 second, let me load my screen here real quick and we can get started. All right. Can everybody see my screen?
We can.
Awesome. Okay. So, welcome to the training of language access. So, it's going to be fun. So, stick with me. If you guys have any question about anything that I showed today, at the end, you will have the opportunity to ask any question, and hopefully I will have answer to all your questions. Okay. So again, my name is Kofi Campbell. I'm the language access coordinator here at the Respect Together, the Pennsylvania Coalition Towards Final Respect. So let's talk about language access. Okay. In the work that we do, providing direct services, one of the major component of it is making sure that we have the services available for everybody, right? That everybody have equal access to the service that we provide, the program that we have available. Because the truth of the matter is, if only a section of the population have access to your program, then it's not complete. Okay. So today we were trying to understand what is language access and why it matters so much. Okay. So at the end of my presentation, my goal is for you all to understand what language access is and how it matters and how exactly that is connected to victim services and equal right compliances and trauma-informed services. Okay. We will also discuss the importance of language access in carrying out and fulfilling our organizational missions and goals. Okay. And then toward the end, we will talk about some of the best practices that we can all take with us to our organization, stuff that we might need to work on. If you're just getting started, um, this might be a good point for you to get started on having a language access plan. Or if you have already started working on everything, then kudos to you. Okay. Just lots of information because we all keep learning. Okay. So first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show a quick video. Okay. Just a short 1 minute video. And then hopefully this works.
Hey, Kofi, I think we're unable to hear it.
Can I hear there's no sound?
Whenever you share your screen, you might have to share with sound. That should be an option for you.
Okay, let me do that again. Is that better?
I don't think we're still able to hear it.
Let me stop sharing for a second. Try to. Okay. Okay, give this one a try. How about now?
Still quiet on our end.
Okay.
Dina/Luna didn't do BS3. Wait, but Dina is the Ramon? Or different? Really?
Apparently, this doesn't want me to show the video, which is so unfortunate. Okay. So pretty much just gonna give you guys what the content of the video is, and then we can continue that way. Apologies for that. Was sure it was going to work. Okay, so pretty much what we were supposed to watch in the video is this mother that speak English that walked into a hospital with her baby in her hand. Uh, her baby definitely has been some emergency situation, but the staff at the hospital do not speak English. They speak a foreign language, and as a result, they cannot understand her. Um, she was trying everything possible to plead to help to them for help, but that did not help because nobody can understand what she was saying or what she needed. Even though she has a baby in hand, the baby's crying. Nobody attempted to assist her because simply they cannot understand anything she was saying. Um, so my goal of showing you that video is for you to reflect a little bit on these type of situations because believe it or not, those happen very often. Okay. Now, imagine you find yourself in a situation like that. I'm sure some of you love traveling. Okay. Let's say you travel, you find yourself in Barcelona, for instance, and then you're having some emergency situation, and for some reason, everybody around you speak Spanish and completely unable to understand what you're saying or how they can help you. Okay. Frustrating situation. Okay. Finding yourself in a situation like that can just bring you to understand why language access is so important, why we need to have the services that we provide available for limited English proficiency individual in like languages that they most understand. Okay. Um, so I was just simply going to ask you guys to reflect a little bit on that video. What do you feel, and how do you think we can, your organization particularly, can put measure in place to make sure that we have your services available for the population that you service. Okay. So hopefully the summary that I just gave you guys worked a little bit. I apologize the video didn't work, but I have the link. If you guys need the link to watch the video later time, I will be able to send it out. Okay. Okay. So as you see in the video, obviously there have been an issue. Okay. And the issue is the lack of communication. The communication didn't work, right? But for service providers such as us and everybody in the room, When that happened, it carried consequences. Okay, and quite literally, it could be consequences, the deciding factor between life and death, as we have seen in so many cases. One of my favorite cases, not like favorite, like I love the detail of that case, but that I love to give as an example is one of the cases that happened in New York involving the NYPD. Okay, the victim name was Garcia, and she was a mother of two. She speak nothing but Spanish, and she was a victim of a domestic violence situation. Okay, she submitted her case to the NYPD, but transcript was submitted in Spanish, and that was never translated into English. So as a result, they have no follow-up into that case. On three separate occasions, she has submitted the same request for assistance. Nothing was done because the transcript that was submitted initially in Spanish was never translated into English. And a few months later, the perpetrator, that happened to be Garcia's boyfriend or ex-boyfriend, murdered her and her two kids. So it was a huge case. I believe it happened in 2014, if I'm not remembering all the detail correctly. And as a result, NYPD was sued for that. Okay, it was a huge case. I'm sure some of you heard of those details. So as you can see, if we fail to provide language access, there can be loss of life, quite literally. Okay. Another consequence is the perpetrator are often rewarded, and this often involve a couple of when the perpetrator speak English and the victim does not speak English, because we know that situation happens all the time. Okay, uh, and if when that happens, we keep the cycle of victimization just keep continuing. Okay, and use system situational re-victimization when the victim doesn't receive proper assistance and they don't know when or where they can receive those assistance, then we keep the cycle continuing. Okay, and as a result, death can be the result of it, as I just discussed. Okay, for your program specifically, if you don't have those program and services available, and the public, LEP individual, are not aware of your services, they're never going to approach you. Okay, and as a result, your organization may never complete their mission. Okay, so it's very important to have those services in the languages that are spoken in your county or your city. Okay, and the last one here that I mentioned here is that the lack of trust in your organization. That is very, very important, especially for law enforcement. Okay, if we want the community to trust in the service that we provide and how we provide services for those community, we must make sure that we put measures in place, making sure that those community can approach us whenever they need our assistance. Okay. Specifically, again, for law enforcement, we've seen cases where the victim was arrested instead of the aggressor. I personally work on cases like that when I was doing direct services. In some situation, cases that I, again, personally worked on, okay, not something that I read in the news or anything. It involved a mother that speak little to no English that was involved in a domestic violence situation with her ex-husband, and custody was involved as well. She ended up losing custody of her kids simply because the court did not provide interpretation. And when the case was referred to me, I just looked into the detail, and the only thing that was missing was that interpretation. okay? Because the mother obviously didn't understand what was happening. So as a result, she lost custody of her kid. And this is a situation that can happen. And when they become worse, um, we assist of the arrest of the victim instead of the aggressor. So in order to prevent all of those situations, the best solution is to have a proper language access policy. Okay. Um, Again, legal situation may be involved. Okay. If we don't have proper measure to accommodate LEP individual, to make sure that uh, everybody receive equal access to our program, then we may be liable to the legal mandate. And now we talk about lawsuit, and nobody wants to deal with lawsuit. I'm sure we all can agree on that. Okay, so these are just some of the consequences of not having language access as a measure to accommodate individuals who speak little to no English. Okay, so that was just a lot of word thrown at you. If you're new at this, you will be asking, so after all of that, what is language access? And that may be a good question. Okay, so basically, simply put, language access is to making sure that we are providing equal access of our services to individuals with limited to or no English proficiency, or individual that are deaf or hard of hearing. Okay, so uh, just providing the services that we provide, making sure that we provide equal access to everybody. That is it. That is language access. Okay, and once we understand this, uh, we can start now working on everything. Um, I was given a cool analogy a couple of days ago. The person that explained this to me said she usually uses analogy of the floor and the ceiling. Okay, so the floor is if you have no language access policy in place, and then you learn that you must provide language access. Now you start working toward the ceiling. Okay, so the goal is to reach the ceiling, and we have to make sure that we start where we need to start. Okay, so understanding what language access is and how we can get started on that is where we need to start working on. Okay. Okay. So when we talk about language access, now that we understand what it is, now we want to know what that looks like in real life. Okay. So one is providing interpretation. Okay. So interpretation can be provided in a various way. The first one is the phone interpretation, where you have an interpreter on the phone that can translate what your client or your patient or the individual that you're working with in the language that they speak. Okay, so you have a phone interpretation, you have a video interpretation, and then in-person interpretation. Okay. Um, In-person interpretation is the kind of interpretation that's usually used in court, okay, where the interpreter is right there with you while you are talking to your client, okay? And then you also have the sign language for the deaf or hard of hearing individuals, okay? I can go into details about sign languages, what is needed, but because of time, just want to mention this. It is also very important that we accommodate deaf or hard of hearing individual because initially, if you talk to any hard of hearing individual, um, they don't usually see themselves as needing language access. Okay, but obviously their first language is the sign language. And then the second language is English. So when you're working with the individual that is deaf with a capital D, you want to make sure that you provide services in a way that they fully comprehend. Okay, so again, we can talk about all those details if you want to. If you need more details about that, please let me know. I'll be able to chat with you one-on-one, and then and we just I have information that way. Okay. The second part of what language access looks like is translation.
But also a lot of
So what we want to do is making sure that we have all our document translated. Okay. The best approach that I'll personally advise centers to do and organizations to do is to figure out the top languages spoken in the county that you serve, county and cities that you serve. And once you figure that out, you translate your vital document in those languages. Okay, it's better to be prepared when you need it than you need it and not be prepared. Okay, this includes having the content of your website, your handout, your brochures translated as well. Okay, and again, for blind individual, you have your information in Braille that they can read. Okay. Okay. So, like I was mentioning before, the question now becomes, is language access protected by the law? And if you have been following me so far, you should definitely have the information that yes, language access is protected by the law. Okay. And we have several policies and recommendations that actually back this up. Okay. So we have first one, and there's only two that I want to mention here for the sake of the space and the timing that we have. The Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of '64. Okay. When we think about language access, this is the policy, the law that actually set the background, the foundation of what we have today as language access, language accessibility. Okay, so pretty much this was the policy that set forth the notion that no person should be discriminated based on race, color, religion. Okay, and there's a long history behind this, but to cut it short, this is pretty much the foundation, the work that laid the foundation for language access as we have it today. Okay, and specifically for federal agencies, we have a policy that the Department of Justice put out in 2015 that laid the ground for organizations and agencies that specifically receive federal funding. Okay, so simply put, if you are an organization, an agency that receives federal funding, you have the obligation. Okay, now that's the word, the obligation to provide language access. Okay, I understand that there's always question about funding, where this funding is going to come from. We can talk about that when the time comes, but understanding that if you receive federal funding, you have the obligation to provide language access. Okay, so that's basically the legal framework of language access. Again, there's a whole lot we can talk about when it comes to legal framework of language access, but because of the time, we can just cut it short this way. Okay. Okay, so now come the fun part. Okay, best practices. So the first thing we want to make sure we start doing, if you have not done the work already, is to start looking for the demographic data and community that you serve. Okay, so we want to know what languages are spoken in our area. Okay, we want to have the data on the LEP individuals and deaf or hard of hearing individuals. Okay, also, if you've been already doing the work, consider or just assume that your service are still not accessible for LEP individuals. Now, what that assumption would do is prompt you to further reach out to those community. Okay, so now we're talking about community outreach here. Okay, so we assume that those individuals don't have access to our program. And so we put in every measure in place to reach out to those communities. Okay, we want to look for language access practices. If you know organizations that provide these services, such as the Pennsylvania Coalition to Advance Respect, we do this work, approach us, ask questions, have an idea of what needs to be done, how it should be done. Okay, I'm sure we can provide you with answers that might be of help for you in your journey of having a very effective language access policy. Okay. Lastly, you should consider having using all the all the thing that you learned along the way, such as the data about the demographic, in creating a strong policy. Okay, and this should also affect how you plan and hire and train your staff. Okay, so consider having in place a policy that's specifically geared toward language access. And once you have that policy, making sure that your staff is aware of those services and how to access those services. Okay. Okay. Now, after we have all those good information about data and everything, here comes specifically put in place a language access plan. Okay. So as service providers, we have, again, the obligation to provide equal services for the whole population. But because, again, like I said before, if only a part of the population access your services, then your mission is not complete. Okay, you will get a satisfaction in knowing that your service is available for everybody, including LEP individuals, hard of hearing, or deaf individuals, or blind individuals. Okay, so here are some of the options. If you're just getting started on the work, okay, consider hiring interpreters. Very important. Okay, we have agencies throughout the state of Pennsylvania, or just the whole United States, that will assist you in having very well trained, trauma-informed interpreters. Okay, that have been doing the work for some time. So whenever you come across an individual that need assistance in some other language other than English, you just get on the phone with those interpreters and then get services going. Okay, contracting with a language solution, even better, because this might actually save you money along the way. Okay, consider hiring bilingual staff. Again, this is my least favorite because we don't want to put the burden on the bilingual staff. Okay, unless you will be paying them for that service, of course. Okay, if it's in their job description that they will be providing interpretation, then why not? But if it's not, then again, go back to option one. Consider hiring interpreters. Okay, and lastly, consider doing frequent community outreach. All right, having brochure available to distribute to the population. We have here at PCAR, we have those I Speak card. It's just a little booklet that you flip through, and then you can show the individual that you have in front of you. They can flip through it. They identify the language that they speak, and then easily you dial the phone. You have an interpreter on the phone for them. Okay. Have resources about trauma-informed interpretation. Again, these are some of the resources that we provide. Okay, if you guys need any assistance about any of this, please let me know. I will be able to chat with you, give you a little bit more information about what these look like and how you can get started on this journey. Okay. Okay, so if you have specific question about having a solid foundation, or how to get started, or having a very good language access plan, these are some of the few tips that I put together for you. Okay, very simple steps. You don't need to overthink anything to have a language access policy. Okay, even if you are a federal agency. Okay, one, assess your language needs. Going back to having the data about the demographic that you serve. All right, making sure that you're aware of the languages spoken in the community that you provide service for. All right, once you have that, you start by developing a policy. Right, the policy should have details about how to access interpretation. What service do you use? What number do you dial? If you need any other factors, such as how to have video interpretation or how to use in-person interpretation, make sure your policy have all these details just so your staff are aware of how to or where to find those services. Okay, and which brings me to the next point. Once you have the policy, make sure your staff is continuously trained on how to use those services. Okay, and then make sure that any document that you have is translated. Okay, including the information on your website, just so when those LEP individuals visit your website, they know, even by not even getting on the phone with you, they know where to find those services that you provide. Okay, and lastly, make sure that you conduct periodic evaluation of your plan. Okay, it may be once a month or on a quarterly basis, but go back, revisit your plan, make sure you keep it up to date, update all the information, all the data as you go. It would just make your organization stronger and making sure that you are completing your mission. Okay. Okay. So this brings me to the last part, the fun part. I'm sure you guys work with our centers throughout Pennsylvania. So what we have, we decided to do is to make a contract with Language Solution, okay, an organization that provide interpretation for us specifically, because we have a contract and we get to dictate the detail of that contract, how we want to have the program available to best assist our centers. Okay, so this is something that your organization may consider doing. Okay, and through this contract, what we have is a platform that our centers can log into and access everything language access. All right, so we also have the services available for our centers in more than 250 languages through the Language Solution that we contracted with. All right, this includes phone, video, in person, and again, all things language access. All right, and with this, we're also making sure that our center enjoy trauma-informed interpretation and services of expert readily 24/7. All right, so again, this is something that you might want to consider if you have not started doing the work already. Even if you have already started doing the work, consider including these in your steps, okay? So again, if you have any question about any of this, I'm available to answer them. Then we can get started on this together, all right? So I believe that is it for me. I'm sure we're reserving the question toward the end, so I would just wait until the end to answer any of your questions that you might have. Desiree, back to you.
All right, thank you, Kofi. Yeah, if anybody has any questions, we can take them at the end, or feel free to put them in the chat. The next portion here, we will pass it over to Natalia Petrova with AOPC.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Natalia, I think you froze. Not quite sure if Natalia froze or if she can hear me. Jamie, I don't know if you want to do your portion and we can maybe come back to Natalia if she hops back in.
Sure, that's completely fine with me.
Okay.
We'll let Talia deal with her technical difficulties. Hi, everyone. I'm Jamie Peasy. I'm the AOPC Stop Violence Against Women Stop Grant Consultant, and I'm going to give you all a little overview on what the Court Stop Grant team has been doing in regards to language access and cultural humility projects. So I'm going to share my screen. Can you all see it? See the PowerPoint?
You're good, Jamie.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay.
I apologize, Jamie, you go first.
Okay, no worries, Natalia. This will be a really quick presentation.
Okay,
So
I apologize, they just kicked me out. Microsoft Word just kicked me out of the meeting, that's all. Sorry about that.
No worries, it happens. Technology is technology, great and frustrating all at the same time. All right, so to take things back here a little bit, this is about when I got involved with the Stop Grant Project through the AOPC as well. It is the 2021 Protection Order Assessment. And this was a two-part project, which involved a virtual survey and in-person, meaning virtual county interviews, because this was during 2021. The first part of the survey, it was developed by the Center for Justice Innovation and the Pennsylvania Protection Order Advisory Group. That was a multidisciplinary group made out of stakeholders that have some sort of job with the protection order process in Pennsylvania. I'm sure there's people on this call that may have been a part of that advisory group, or I'm sure that took the survey as well. We had quite the success with people filling out the survey. Over 900 people took the survey, and this was a over 60 question survey. So we were asking a lot of our participants, and we had a total of 694 people representing 67 counties submitting a completed survey. So again, we had quite the response. And the second part included those virtual interviews, 68 to be exact, conducted in Adams, Berks, Crawford, Lycoming, Montgomery, and Washington counties. Those interviews were an hour in length and conducted with a diverse group of stakeholders, including judges, court administration, court clerks, prosecutors, advocates, civil attorneys, probation, law enforcement, and defense attorneys. Here is a breakdown of who responded to the survey. So you can see the bulk was our judicial officers and advocates, but we do have representation from all of the stakeholder categories pretty much. And I wanted to pull some of the questions from the survey and assessment that specifically touched on language access and cultural humility, just so because I thought you all would find it interesting. And as we can see here, most people are familiar with the process for securing an interpreter if someone needs them to complete protection order paperwork. The only demographic here, which had more no than yes answers, was law enforcement. But I will also say we did not have the highest response rate from law enforcement. As we can see over here, they're only 4% and they did get clumped in with other. So just take that in mind as you're looking at these survey results. But it seems like all in all, like people know what to do when it comes with securing an interpreter, according to this survey at least. Some other questions that touch on this. And again, since this was done during COVID 2021, we wanted to make sure that the answers were not being persuaded by how COVID had changed things. So you'll notice that a lot of these have before and during COVID aspects to them. Again, most people are comfortable securing interpreter services if they need them, although there was a slight impact because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And this question I find pretty interesting because we can see here on the question that asked, what do you see as the area most in need of improvement related to the protection order process? That prior to COVID-19, better accommodations for LEP, hearing and seeing impaired and or immigrants were actually, it was the highest. That is what most stakeholders saw in need of improvement. Things changed a little bit during COVID, we can see, and we go back to wanting more availability for hearings and just persons having a better understanding of the dynamics of domestic violence, sexual assaults, and human trafficking. But it's definitely something that people were concerned about. And then some more findings related to cultural competency and language access. This is from those in-person site interviews. And what was telling here is that most interviewees could not provide information about race, gender, language, or sexual orientation of the persons who were entering their courts for protection order processes. This just stood out to the Center for Justice Innovation as most people aren't aware of these things because no one is taking data on them. They aren't being paid attention to. We're not thinking about it, so it's not a problem. But if we go and compare the demographics of those counties compared to the kinds of persons in nationalities and languages that the interviewees said they saw, something, it was not exactly lining up. So armed with that information, knowing that, okay, like we need to give persons some more information about the different cultures and different languages of persons living in their communities, we came up with the Culturally Responsive Court Regional Justice Systems Training Series, and this happened in the fall of 2022. We had trainings in Pittsburgh, State College, Lancaster, Philadelphia, Bethlehem, and Scranton. Those trainings included an introduction to what being a culturally responsive court is, with representatives from the Center for Justice Innovation. And then perhaps the most exciting part of the trainings was our community-specific panels, which represented some of the most commonly requested languages for court interpretation. And Natalia is going to touch on this a little bit more in her presentation as well. And we also had presentations on accent bias and forensic linguistics. And at the end of the training, there was an action planning session to put some of the lessons that had been learned into action. But during that action planning section, all of the persons at the training voiced what their needs were, kind of like where they were at after learning all this information, how did they feel their jurisdiction could improve. And since we did this at all 6 training sites, I was able to get a bird's eye view of what people were in need of. This is their their stated needs. And the first one is the need for more interpreters, including American Sign Language, bilingual court staff, easy access to translated forms. Natalia is going to talk about the forms right when I'm finished too. And also forms for different case types. And then there was also a real desire to share resources and other information, including those community demographics and case information across systems and jurisdictions. This really spoke to the desire that the persons at the training had to make connections with local cultural communities, but really having no idea where to start. There was definitely a desire for cross systems, implicit bias, cultural sensitivity trainings, especially including LGBTQ and trans accommodations for trans clients, as well as DV and sexual assault training. A desire to obtain litigant information regarding language access at the onset of proceedings. It was mentioned a few times that it wouldn't be till we were further on in the process that we realized that we had a person that needed an interpreter in the first place, and that became quite a thorn in the sides of the persons at the training. And finally, a desire for waiting rooms, better designed for domestic violence cases, to separate the parties, and improved bilingual signage around the court. And these are just the general needs from the whole state. This is really abbreviated and simplified, but we just thought it would be interesting for everyone to hear about. And next, this brings us to our 8-part webinar that we've created using footage from all of those training sites and the trainings that I just mentioned. It includes all the community panels from all 6 training locations, in addition to all the substantive material from the trainings. You can access them right here on Vimeo. I will share the link in the chat once I am done speaking, and can even see where the chat is now that I'm sharing my screen. So this is available for anyone to watch, so you can see all of that content and hear about some of the persons that are living right in our backyards. And there is also a companion guide PDF that goes along with the videos that can be used to help you contextualize some of the content that you will be learning. And you will receive that in the follow-up email from Desiree. And finally, that's all for me today. My contact information is on the screen, and I did want to let you all know about an upcoming STOP training that we are doing. It does not touch on language access or cultural humility, but it is about coercive control, and I implore everyone to sign up. I will share that Zoom link in the chat as well when I am finished talking. I guess that's all for me. I will finish sharing my screen and hand it back to Desiree.
Great, thank you so much, Jamie. Yeah, if Jamie wants to get those in the chat, everybody can have access to them. We'll also be sending copies of the PowerPoint presentations out via email to everybody as well. So now I will pass it over to Natalia.
And I hope this time Microsoft Teams won't kick me out. So let's hope for the best. I would like to share my screen with sound, it looks like, because I'm going to show the video and share the sound. Can you see my screen now?
Not yet.
Okay. Let me try one more time. Can you see it now?
I think it's trying to work here.
I hope it works for me. I really do. Do you see the slides?
It's still dark.
Yeah, it looks like it's loading, Natalia, like it was
Yeah.
before.
So how about now? Do you see my slideshow?
No.
Still trying to load, I think. Let me.
Just 2 hours ago, Mary and I had a meeting about Microsoft Teams because we're just starting using them. I've never used them for a presentation before, and they were misbehaving just like that. Can you see it now?
It's working.
Yes.
Whew, thank you. Thanks God. That's great. Well, thank you for having me. My name is Natalia Petrova. I'm the administrator of the interpreter program in Pennsylvania State Courts. My coordinator, Mary Prevenko Fogarty, is also in the audience. The two of us are the interpreter program certification team. I was asked to give some numbers about the use of interpreters and language access in general in Pennsylvania state courts. And so here are the numbers. The total expenditures for 2022, these are the freshest numbers we can get because there's kind of a lag in reporting from the districts, has been $6.1 million. And the number of encounters, the total number in 2022 has been over 47,000. Which is quite a lot, as you can imagine. And on my next slide, I'm going to show you the most used languages in Pennsylvania state courts. It's not a surprise that over 80% of encounters are for Spanish, but languages other than Spanish, which we lovingly called LOTS, languages other than Spanish, are these. These are the average numbers for the whole state. And you can see that Nepali is number one. There is a lot of Nepali speakers in the state of Pennsylvania. Chinese, American Sign Language, Russian, Arabic, Portuguese, Vietnamese. You can see the rest of them. I put the 11 here that are most often used in 2022. I must admit that during those trainings, local trainings on cultural responsive court that Jamie mentioned, we got the stats for a particular area where we were presenting. And you'll be surprised that in some regions of the state, the distribution is different. So for instance, I remember that the numbers for Berks County surprised me very much because at Berks County, the Spanish language was not 80%, it was over 95%. And so it depends on the area of the state, how those languages can be ranked, but these are the general, this is a general picture for you for the state. Now, our program was created in 2007 by a statute, a state law, Act 172, also called the Interpreters Law. We are the only licensing court interpreter program for the state of Pennsylvania. We certify both foreign language and sign language interpreter, American Sign Language interpreters. I should be more precise. As of January 2024, we had 272 interpreter listings, and those folks were working in 45 languages, including American and Australian Sign Language, actually, on the roster. Our program provides resources for underrepresented languages, and those of you who work for the courts, and I saw quite a few familiar names, and you work in the districts, and we work with a lot of you on a regular basis providing resources for languages that are not represented on the roster, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute. Our program is always looking for referrals. We have recruiting materials, and I would like to stress that those referrals are always welcome. If any one of you has a good connection to a particular community speaking a language, or a university with a very strong language department that could give us strong bilingual, trilingual candidates for our program, please get back to us. We will be happy to reach out to those folks. Interpreter roster is our main product. That's a great resource for a lot of people and organizations and agencies. A roster is basically a list of interpreters who have been certified, who went through a rigorous certification process. They took examinations, and they are registered with our program. They're in good standing with our program, and they're qualified to provide interpretation services in the courts and elsewhere as well. The roster is available publicly on the website, www.pcourts.us. You can always download the roster. And the interpreters are listed in the roster by language, first of all, in alphabetical order, then by county of where they are located. There's also a specific location, the township where they live, and things like that. Then their contact information, whether or not they are doing video or telephonic interpreting, and their availability. And since this roster is in public access, I know that many different agencies belonging to executive branch, not necessarily judicial branch, use this list for all kind of interpretation and language access needs. I must admit that this roster is updated every month. Actually, we happened to send a new update yesterday because it's the end of the month. It happens always at the end of each month. And we also post on the website that month's changes that were, or updates that happened to the roster that month. So what you see on the slide is what was happening in August 2022 when we put one new Arabic interpreter on the roster and 3 interpreters renewed their certification. And there's other good information on that. It's usually a one-page document that you can also download from the website if you're curious of anything new that's going on with our interpreters. Jamie mentioned our Stop Grant tour, as we called it, when we went to 6 locations throughout the state with presentations on culturally competent courts. So specifically we had great conversations with the panelists, by the way, but I would like to give you just one example of how that specific interaction, that specific presentation brought some really good results as far as recruiting interpreters and providing interpreters in a very needed language. In November 2022, one of our presentations was in Lancaster when one of the panelists was Miss Linda Crockett, who works for Safe Communities, a nonprofit from Lancaster County. And she works with Amish women and they speak Pennsylvania Dutch. So I would like, and I hope to God that Teams will not let me down this time, because I would like to show you just 3 minutes of video of what she said at that time. So let me try and do this. Hold on. Do you see the video? Okay. All right. So, all right. Just listen to 3 minutes of a question and an answer about interpreters in Pennsylvania Dutch.
Interpreters for the Plain community, because they've even had instances where victims have come forward, someone is interpreting and they find out afterwards that they're actually admonishing the victim while they're interpreting for them. So if you could give some pointers on that, that would be great.
Yeah, I'm glad you raised that. Amish children speak only Pennsylvania Dutch until they go to school. So the Pennsylvania court system, of course, requires that interpreters in child advocacy centers, where they would go to be questioned if they're suspected to have been sexually abused, be court certified. That's a good thing, but it's a complicated process. And many Amish women and plain women I know would love to be interpreters, but they can't begin to navigate how to do that. So most of the interpreters that we have are non-native speakers. And this is not just about translation of words, right? We're talking about culture. It's about the nuance and the idiomatic expressions that are used and not used. And the way questions are asked in plain culture is completely different than somebody who's just translating from outside a native tongue is going to understand. So I'll give you an example of what this looks like. 2 little Amish girls were sexually abused. Both made separate and very credible disclosures to a conservative Mennonite counselor who's fluent in Pennsylvania Dutch. It took nearly 2 weeks to get them into the advocacy center for their interviews because of problems getting an interpreter. When they finally got in there, they gave these little Amish girls a male interpreter. Little Amish girl would never talk to a man about anything like this. He happened to be a person of color. They had never seen one before. And he dressed in English clothing. They were totally out of their element. And when they came out of the interviews, they told their mom, they told the therapist, they could hardly understand a word he said. They said his Pennsylvania Dutch didn't make sense to them. So no disclosure. Case was closed. If those little girls had been with an Amish woman who was court certified, dressed as they are, accustomed to speaking in a way that they understand, we might have had a very different outcome. But we don't have those folks in place.
Thank you. And I think
Oh, geez. Now I'm trying to get out of this video and show you my
that really speaks
presentation.
to some gaps, and we're going to talk about gaps later.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now, Desiree? Okay. I apologize. It's my first time again presenting over this. So, okay, do you see the slide? Okay, very good. So based on that very emotional, I don't know, testimony statement that Linda made, I started remembering if we ever had a Pennsylvania Dutch interpreter come to our program at all through the years. I've been with the program since 2012, and I think we had like 3 people come to our program with Pennsylvania Dutch language, and none of them could pass the English written exam. And I was surprised at the time to find out about this, but now after having heard what Linda had to say, I realized that their English language was not just good enough to pass the English proficiency exam that all interpreters are required to take and pass at 80%. So what we did was our, what is on the next slide, and you can see the timeline of what happened actually. During that time. So in November 22nd, we had this presentation, we had this conversation. And then my then assistant Ilana and I were both in the picture here. We went to give an outreach presentation to Elizabethtown. It was a historic schoolhouse at Reese Mennonite Church. And those are from Lancaster County might know where it is exactly. And there we took this picture. You see, we talk about the program, and Linda sent the word out about this presentation, and we got 25 people attending just to listen about this program. And that was the only picture that we have taken with them, because we knew, and they confirmed that they do not really like to take pictures. So only those of them who agreed to have this picture taken are in this picture. There were 25 people altogether. And then 15 of them attended an orientation, which is the second step of certification process. After having attended the orientation, their next step would have been that same English written exam that nobody could pass. So to have them better prepared, Linda, her team, and us, we came up with this idea of providing them with materials to study for the written exam, and Safe Communities got, or they had, some grant money, and I think Jamie knows more about it than I do, but they got some money to hire instructors, English instructors, and they had either weekly or bi-weekly, I'm not sure, study circles, just studying materials for the written exam, some legal vocabulary that's used in the court, and how to interpret it in Pennsylvania Dutch. And those sessions went between July and October in Lancaster County. And then comes October 18th, they took the written exam. the English written exam, and out of 15 candidates, 10 actually passed. And according to them, those study circles really, really helped them go through this and be successful. Then in November, we gave them the oral exam that's required with certification in their language. And then the end result of this whole endeavor was us placing 10 Pennsylvania Dutch interpreters on the roster in December and January of 2022. And we felt really good about it. It got a lot of nice coverage in the local media like this one. Because immediately, even when we even started that initiative, the word spread in the community that the interpreters are going to be available, and they started getting calls. Safe Community started getting calls from law enforcement, from the state of Minnesota, from the Amish community there, from the state of Ohio, and this was just really great that all these communities needed interpreters. And unless we have heard about this need from Linda, we would have never known, because you saw the list of languages on my previous slide. Pennsylvania Dutch is not one of them. We do not have that many requests for Pennsylvania Dutch through our program. However, because our list is used publicly by many different organizations, by placing them on our roster, we gave access to language access, not only to the courts, but I think to many different organizations and agencies. And I wouldn't even know who used them, but I know they sometimes talk to us that they are getting very busy. So that's the end of that story. And I just have a few more slides to just tell you about what resources we have that are available publicly and that can help with language access. They're kind of similar to what Kofi was talking about, but they are on the court website. Number one is our website, Language Access Interpreter Program. You can see that you can use all these links to read about the program, to know where the language coordinator says. Bilingual forms are here, and I have a separate slide for those. So that is a great resource for anyone who needs that. Now, hold on. Oi. Okay. I'm getting some glitches here again. I'm really sorry. So, okay. Another resource is like below the page that I just showed you of language access page. There are some wonderful videos in English and in Spanish talking about protection orders. All kinds of protection orders are explained in those videos, and I think they were masterfully done, because the English speaker is culturally appropriate to those who speak English, to like that kind of population. And the Spanish speaker is a Latina woman, and she does it beautifully and appropriately to her culture and her language. So if you need that information, those videos would be a great resource for any of you. Now, there are also resources on the general website page. It's not our page, it's PA Courts US /learn. And they're also, they're not videos, they're cartoons, but they're extremely well done. I watched them all. And they're also in English and in Spanish, and they break the whole process of filing a protection order for you in the visual form, in the form of cartoons, and also there is a write-up here if you want to view, need help now. There is a script, there is a write-up and a list of things to do if you want to file a protection order, and things like that. So I think that's a wonderful resource as well. We also have statewide translated forms available in 13 languages. Over 70 court forms are available. I don't know if I have time to show where they are on the website. Do I or I do not? Let me know. Can I hear if I have time or if I don't?
Yeah, you should have some time, Natalia.
Okay, I just have a link here embedded in this slide, and I just wanted to show where you can find it. I hope the website will open for me. Can you see the website?
Yes.
Okay, so this is our website, and the forms are here. So they're here. If you click on here, you get this page. And let me show you. So they're by category, and they are bilingual in all these languages: Arabic, Haitian Creole, Korean, Portuguese, Vietnamese. You see that? So my language is Russian. So let me click on this one because I kind of know what it is. So for instance, if you need a Russian form, they will be bilingual. The title will be in both languages, and the whole form will be also side by side, English and a foreign language. So for example, I don't know, interpreter equipment. Let's see this, what we have here. So you see that's the English text, the Russian, the English, the Russian. So you can use it for many different things. I think it's a wonderful resource that we have. Now, we also have notice of language rights, which goes with every notice that the court sends to the public by mail. It's in all these languages. Also, we have ISP cards, and Coffee talked about ISP cards. We have them too. One side is in a foreign language, and the back side is in English with the language. We also have right to interpreter posters, and they are displayed in local court offices so that everybody can see them and they can point to the language that they speak. They're usually laminated, and we send them all. They're on the website. A court, if they don't have one, can print it from the website, laminate it, and display that. And finally, under the language access plan, all judicial districts now have access to telephone interpreting. Many districts have made laminated cards with this information. So the district, this is, for example, the card with Propio. This is one of the providers of telephonic interpreters, but there are other companies, and districts have freedom of choosing the provider for telephonic services that they like to provide services when an in-person interpreter is not available, when it's an emergency hearing, and things like that. And this is all I have. Let me stop sharing, and thank you.
Thank you, Natalia. So I was saying, Natalie, I saw you raised your hand.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're paying attention to the chat because some good comments and questions have come in. Let me go to the chat here, and maybe Jamie or Natalia can answer this question. We got a question from Angelica. Are local counties prothonotarians familiar with these forms, and will they allow their use? So, and I think she was referring to all of those translated forms that you were showing, Natalia, a few moments ago.
These forms are for use by anybody who wants to use them. What we found is a little bit of an issue that sometimes the statewide form that's had been translated is a little bit different than the form that the district wants to use, but it's about the same issue, the same thing. Unfortunately, we have 60 judicial districts, and we were not able to get everybody's forms with all their little differences and translate them. However, we are always open to getting suggestions on what specific local form is worth translating. And if you get back to us with those suggestions, we will be happy to consider and maybe spend resources on translating that particular form. We have a translation committee, which is a subcommittee of the monitoring and evaluation team, which is by law a part of our language access plan. It's a requirement to have that committee, and we discuss those issues on a regular basis. We have a rubric that allows us to decide as a team whether or not a particular form is considered a vital form, and vital forms can be and should be translated, obviously. I don't know if I have answered that question or not, but
This is Natalie again. There was a comment earlier on in the presentation from Delia saying that one challenge is getting an interpreter in a specific language, and also can help if the person is hearing impaired, dual language needs. So I'm not sure what is meant there. Are you talking about perhaps someone who's hearing impaired, but who also has grown up in a different culture and maybe needs that, that culture's version of sign language interpretation? Or I don't know, Delia, if you want to clarify that.
it is possible that Delia means foreign sign language.
Uh-huh.
Because we have had instances when remember I showed the list of the graph with the languages, and Nepali, one of the very frequently used languages. So there is a big deaf Nepali speaking community. So they need Nepali Sign Language, not just Nepali language and not American Sign Language at all. It's a different system of signs that exists in the country of Nepal, and that's what they know. So this is a really challenging situation. However, we're trying to find resources in every particular instance, and we recently got somebody on the roster who is a master American Sign Language interpreter, and she has been in Nepal, and she has been working she's torn actually among different Nepali deaf communities in different parts of the United States. But she travels between New Hampshire and Pennsylvania. I think she has 2 residences or something like that. She attended our orientation, and she does work with Nepali Sign Language. So basically, she trained somebody who is a Nepali signer. She taught them American Sign Language. So if you hire her, there will be 2 interpreters. So there'll be her, and there'll be a Nepali deaf person who signs in Nepali Sign Language. He will be signing to her, and she'll be interpreting it, because she's a hearing person. She's not deaf herself. She will interpret it to you in spoken English, or she can do interpret it into American Sign Language if there is a need. But I agree, it is challenging because in every country, sign languages are different. Even in Australia, we got somebody with Australian Sign Language. Sign language is different. So this person can do American Sign Language and Australian Sign Language. Spanish is different. So it is challenging. I absolutely agree with you. Let us know, and we will try. We always try to get out of our way to find your resources. And I can give you multiple examples of our heroic deeds on this, but I don't think I have time.
Thank you, Natalia. Does anybody else have any other questions for any of our presenters?
Hi, this is Danny from PCADV. I just had a question that I kind of popped in the chat that sort of went off of Angelica's question, but was sort of around the education to prothonotarians and to court staff around their requirement to provide language access. We work with folks who've programs who've run into issues where, the court says, well, we don't have to translate that, or, please come back at another time when we have someone on the phone and such a PFAs and stuff like that. And selective sort of, I would say, translation of certain proceedings that the court does, but not others. So more so, like, what is the training y'all do around that, if any, and sort of if we run into those issues in working with stakeholders, sort of what do you recommend in terms of what would be the best way to sort of address it and sort of get the court back on the right track of providing what they need to provide per the language access rules under PA law?
Well, first of all, there is Act 172. It's a great reference to begin with. Then there is a document that is also on the website. It's called Administrative Regulations. These are the specific rules of providing language access in our state courts. Also, we have a team. Our team, Mary and I, we are in Philadelphia, and we are mostly involved in certification process and outreach and things like that. But we have a court access coordinator. Her name is Marissa Lair, and she's in Harrisburg. And her the second person she works with is Stephen Baldwin. And Marissa is a lawyer, and she would probably be a better person for you to talk to about those issues because she knows exactly how courts operate. My expertise is basically interpreting and language access, and she might be a better person for you to look into the legal aspect of it. And I will give you the email. Hold on. I don't know how to use this Teams. Geez, I need to find the chat and put the email in there, right? Okay, I will do that now. Hold on.
So Jamie, this is Natalie. Your Culturally Responsive Court Series. Can anyone access that? Is that kind of like on a publicly available part of AOPC's website, if anyone's interested to look at those?
It is publicly available. We have it hosted on Vimeo.
Okay.
I added that Vimeo link in the chat, so anyone who's interested in watching those videos, and you would be able to see the entire panel of that just little 3-minute segment that Natalia shared with Natalie asking a question to Linda Crockett from Safe Communities. You'll be able to see the entire panel for Lancaster and all the other counties as well.
Thank you.
And it looks like we have one more question in the chat here from Lorraine. Are the courts obligated to translate court orders if interpreters need to be used?
Again, I do not believe so, but maybe you can ask Marissa about it. Our obligation, which forms to translate, which not to translate, is more her domain at this point.
Could you give some context to that question? Or maybe an example of the situation it came from, Lorraine?
Sure. I'm thinking of cases where we need to use interpreters because our client, like, let's say it's a PFA case and the plaintiff does not speak English, and our court's actually pretty good about getting the interpreters in the court for the hearing, but then when the court order is issued, they're not translating the order for the client, right? We end up doing that sometimes. We end up translating a letter to the client, getting a letter to the client translated in the language the client can read, and then getting the PFA order in a language the client can read. And this also comes up when the defendant cannot read English. So I'm not aware of the court taking on that responsibility, which I think would be great. So it just didn't occur to me that I'm wondering, because there's so much work being done with interpretation, if the translation efforts by the court are better in other areas than where I'm working. I just wondered if there was any authority to say you must translate these court orders so that the litigants leave court with an order in the language they can understand. That's all.
Thank you.
Well, if I may comment on this, in the past, we always had this position that interpreters also do site interpretation. So while you still have a live interpreter for the hearing or whatever the case may be, they can site translate a document when they look at the document and they are interpreting from the written source into the foreign language to the litigant, to the defendant, or whoever the case may be. However, if it's after you have released the interpreter, they left, then it becomes an issue. And again, this is a matter of deciding whether or not the form is vital and whether it warrants translation. So I guess it's an open question, which forms are to be translated, which are not. And again, if there is a variation in the district of how the form looks or how it's formatted and things like that, that creates additional layer of difficulty in picking a particular translation form for translating. Because every time we change something in the form, even the statewide forms, for example, recently we have changed something in the interpreter waiver form. There's a form that one can use when the interpreter is waived. When the parties, for whatever reason, do not want to use the interpreter or and they want to waive them. So there is a process to waive the interpreter, and there is a form that has to be completed and signed as part of the record. Recently, this form was slightly changed. There was like a few lines removed from this form. We had to remove the translated form from the website because until we have the exact equivalent in the other language of that form, we cannot post it on the website. So every time there is even a little bit of a change, we have to redo everything. So that just bear that in mind as well. So if you think any forums that you're using are really, really important to you, why don't you contact us with a suggestion and we'll see what we can do about it. That would be my take on it.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Great. Thank you so much for your presentations today, Kofi, Natalia, and Jamie. Like I said earlier, we will get those presentations out to everybody so that you can have all of the links that are in the presentations and access to the videos that are in there. Before we go, it is 2:30, but does anybody have any specific questions for the protocol development that you're working on or anything like that? Okay, hearing nothing, we will wrap it up for today. Thank you so much. Oh, Tanya, I see you popped your hand up there.
Hi, I just wanted to say, for those of you, and that's not everybody on this call, but for those of you who have to complete a Muskie report every year who receive a STOP grant, I hope you got an email from me. If not, let me know. Reach out to any of us at PCCD. But I just wanted to say, I sent you the sample form. That's really the best we have at this point this year. They're changing everything, so we're kind of just trying to do the best we can for right now. But if you have questions on it, please let me know. I can send you a Word document, which some of you may have gotten, but it's a little bit challenging this year. But if anyone has questions, like us at PCCD are happy to help you at any point. So I just wanted to get that in really quick. Thanks, Des.
So Yes, and this is Natalie. We provided you with that sample form, and I think the big question is, why can't I complete this? And what they're moving away from is having you complete a form and send it to PCCD. Basically, what you need to do is use that sample form, gather your data that you need to report, but eventually what they're going to provide us with is a web link, and you will go on that web link and put in all your data. Essentially, you'll complete that form electronically. Did I get that right, Tanya? Because I
Yeah.
think people are hoping to have a form that they can put stuff into,
Right.
and that's the problem.
Yeah, right. And once you, I mean, you won't be doing the web form this year. We will kind of be the intermediary, but in the future, you'll be able to use the web form and review your answers and go back and come, you don't have to, it's no pressure. You don't have to do it all at once or anything. I think that it will be a little bit easier, but for now this year it'll be a little bit backwards, but we're happy to help if you have any issues. Thanks.
I saw a question from Ashley, and there's a question from Barbara. So Ashley?
I just wanted to say thank you to Tanya for sending the actual Word doc, because we've
Sure.
been trying to play with the PDF version and came
Okay.
up with the best solution, that it was to print it and handwrite it.
You can do that. You
I've been
can do
chipping
that if
away
you
at
want.
it that way, but I greatly appreciate the Word
Sure.
document.
Sure. It's not perfect, but it's as close as I could get.
It's fantastic versus the other way.
Thanks.
Babs?
Thanks. So just so I am understanding, we would complete a Word doc with the necessary information, and that's what we send?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like I sent out a PDF, but I also sent out a Word document, so you can attempt to type on the Word document. Some of the sections, like I couldn't format it properly, but you can also just look at the PDF and then type your answers on a totally separate Word document if you'd like, just so all the answers are there, whatever way is easier for you. I know
Thanks,
not everybody
Tanya.
has like a bunch of screens, and I think with 2 screens, it would be relatively easy, but I know that's not everybody's case, so.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, anything else, Des? Or any other questions? I don't think so. Okay.
If anybody does have any other questions, feel free to reach out to any of us at PCCD, either individually or using the resource account. We'll be more than happy to kind of go over anything with anybody. With that, if nobody has any other questions, we will wrap up our presentation for today. Next month, we will not be having a virtual check-in, but we will be sending out something in bulletin form. So keep an eye on your emails towards the end of next month for our March check-in. So again, thank you to our presenters. We definitely appreciate it. It was really great information today that you provided. So in the meantime, everybody stay safe and we'll see you next time.
Bye.